started another channel. Another file was just created that did not interrupt me at all. I am perfectly content with the Zen nature of the unpredictable and yet oh so predictable interruptions in the constant wonders of my speech. I only heard one person I've ever known tell me about, as a child, where they would go and sit and how in nature to make themselves feel better. And it was under a tree. And as deep down into the nook of that tree as they could get. They were a girl. And they pass through your life and you know this person and they're gone or whatever. But I will never forget what she said. I thank people for not everything people share with me is bad, although a lot of it is. Of course there is something there that she mentioned that, why she was going to that tree. She had that knowledge. You can want to go places in nature. And it can be nice if you feel like if you're going there for any, say, oppressive reason, which most people at some point are going to go out in nature to get away from something greatly or not so greatly oppressive to them, stressful. Your own occupations can become oppressive if you do not interrupt them with going somewhere else and doing something else and getting into a different attitude. And even if it's like playing sports or doing something or mountain climbing, it's not really restful, but different occupations give us rest from other occupations. And so if you're doing a job, I'm going to get a bit severe here, but let's say you go to work 5 days a week, as many people do, and your rest busy enough from your work that it's as though another occupation. And what if resting from that amount of work is always going to be as though another kind of work? And if not done correctly, and measured out though in years that cannot always be detected in the more minuscule increments of your day-to-day life, to end up working more than you were ever adequately awarded for. Because even your work was kind of at war with your rest, which was kind of at war with your best interest. And your work and your other work, your work in that your rest became another kind of work, or that it never ceased to be another kind of work, and could not be that kind of work or that kind of rest that could adequately pay back the exertions which you had undertaken to do your real work. Which can take, by my estimation, a lot of rest or the right kind of alternative work. It might be that you get one day off and you mow your Zen garden, you work out in the basement, you listen to satanic music cranked up to 10, you sit down with your children individually and find out about their lives and help them with their homework, and give them and write them information and advice that they can take ahead, and help them to understand and appreciate the sacrifices you're making so that you can sustain a long-lived bond with your children despite protracted and repeated absences from their lives. Effects that a lot of families will tend to suffer from quite silently and on in truth through the job. Sounds pretty precipitous, doesn't it? It's amazing, people were trained to, in general, in terms of the recreational world, to do scary and daring things that can do everything from cure us of cancer or to give us a new career away from our jobs, installing refrigerators or selling cars, by jumping off of mountains and taping ourselves, screaming and shitting ourselves. Risk-taking behavior. And humans are trained to take risks. And so if you're already worshipping risk-taking, how do you know the most secure lifestyle does not sustain all kinds of risks that you've become numb to ever stumbling upon? You will sooner find a treasure or an old fucking from 1955 somewhere that you're going to find an adequate description of the scale and nature of the cost of your secure daily working regimen. It's not something that you or anyone is really reliably hunting down. You go shooting on the weekends, you play golf, You do something else that's performance driven, that gives you, you go for a long run. But notice all this restful occupations. When do you ever really rest? To the point that, just like if you were forced to eat, and at some point you need to see what life is like without eating a hamburger every day, and be it hamburgers or anything else, your body would start to just grow back from the shock of being forced to eat hamburgers. When you force children to endure the stresses of a labor-oriented way, as they are formed into every kind of labor by no less persuasive means than that, meted out by the years and the seasons and the birth and death of Christ and tax season, and when their parents are happy or sad, and when the sun of your life comes out, and how much of that just buries itself into your flesh and blood, your diabetes, your obesity, your personality, that effectively sexually molests 1 out of 10 people in your life on a regular basis. How do you ever pull yourself from that hamburger after hamburger lifestyle, so you see what it's like when your body has fully from 8 hours of work 5 days a week for the last 5 years or the last 15 years? And what happens is that people's existence and life is so strongly bound up with working that they fear that if they couldn't work, they would die. And when they stop working, they start dying. In anticipation of which, people start dying to prepare themselves for working and dying when they're not useful to society anymore. That's scary, right? In this persuasive way of talking, in these more measures, are meted out through music, literature, entertainment, and theater. All to become an actor and to become a worker is to start dying. Unless you're the person who really makes the money, and you're the person who gets out of the acting world, which is royalty in both cases, right? Practice is to sustain, though somewhat blissfully, as acting relieves you of certain neurosis. If you're a shy child, your parents would say, just go to work and become a good worker, and you'll they're nothing, because what they're saying is that as you enter into the world of adult fears, natural fears of a child, just go away. In fact, you should expect to destroy those to become an adult. You should lose your inhibitions, because these fears in the industrial manifestation of who you're supposed to be in the world. And it desensitizes you. So now, if you do rest from work, it's like a child that's been hit when he learns to read. To encounter rest to the point that the influence of your work, good or bad, starts to release itself upon you, inasmuch as it was acquainted with you in a very poor and abusive way, you start to go into shock. You might even start to die. You feel like you're dying. So no one wants to stop working. No one wants to leave the world, because they will die. The world makes them so safe. They're so identified that everything that life is to be part of an economic system. You see what I'm saying? And so when you're born, you're assumed to have already started dying. They'll tell you that all your telomeres start decreasing the day of your birth. They start halving themselves like a radioactive decay. It's not true. It doesn't even matter if it is. You are already pre-imagined to be dying by birth. As much as you have to die, but your father has to die, you have to die and become someone else to become an adult and to have a job. And the person you become has at the same time sublimated the natural spirit, ethic, and blood. Right? Jung says that you live in the unconscious of your mother and father, because they've learned in their economic lives to sublimate their true sex and the true safety of their own flesh and blood. And that is shoved down your throat like an oily rag, while they help you to speak and be yourself and be the wonderful person that they believe that you can be. And there's nothing they're doing that could possibly inhibit that, unless you've got some kind of disease, and with that too by giving you poison. And we do this, and yet we think we're more advanced in so-called primitive societies that tie strong ropes around their children's heads so they can make them deformed as they get older. You're not doing anything different All that shit is made up so you can project the barbaric undercurrent of the measures of your wonderful Western existence and what is really done to the human mind. That we can see the range of criminality and disease, which is the same thing. And as myself, walking for 15 miles, just the way women come up to me and how women are always aggressive to me, and flirtation from the pure aggression, and they don't seem to know any other language. That woman who passed me is a stalker. But you wouldn't think so. People never would think that such and such a person is a sexual predator. They just don't think that way. Because people aren't allowed to really think about anything. They're allowed to keep your senses. If everyone really had all their senses alive, you'd be like a native person from the 12th century. You would not, you'd be like a cat on a hot tin roof around people. Because people are full of all kinds of parasites. Like they call it the white sickness. White people are considered to be extremely sick by native people, mentally ill. The way that we collect money, and the way our security seems to be predicated on snuffing the life out of our children and forcing them to watch violent acts hundreds of times a day. That their life in its best imagination, and that of the Christian or Catholic Church, is nothing but utter violence, and ends all violence by being the height of all violence. And then saying that you're the reason for it, because it's so hard to take care of you, because your parents committed some sort of financial crimes 6 years ago and entered into an endless amount of debt, so that the universe is constantly getting cold and expanding, and the sun can't be nuclear, and your family can't be explosive and warmly absorbent of the bituminous material of your flesh and blood, to answer for all of the cold, dark of the excessively parasitical and or feminine, septic, economic lunacy and matrimonial system around you. The consummation with death is supposedly devoutly to be wished. People suffer, they marry to suffer, their love turns to suffering, their sex turns to suffering, your work turns to suffering, your thousands of hours glued to your televisions is turned to suffering. Nothing in this world is not useful in helping to turn your life to torture and suffering, and to jack up your magical thinking and your suspension of disbelief, and to toxify and intoxicate you with the very thing that poisons you in the rhapsody of industrial human denial, psychopathology, and personality disorders and or complexes, all ruled over by the abstract chieftains, saints, and angels of every so-called fucking subject in the world. As a child online, I said, Einstein changed my life. Fucking, he's an actor, for fuck's sake. It's all made up shit. But how are you supposed to know that? Unless somebody shows you, teaches you, someone who has learned, because the world taught him. And all the sociopaths I've met taught me, which are all the women I've met, taught me about lying. Because I can't do it. Liars have me at a total disadvantage. Because passive-aggressive people, sarcastic people, you win. Because I'll never play your game back at you, ever. Violent people, sexual predators, you win. I can just keep you off for a certain amount. You have already conquered the world with your psychopathology. Well, the only one who's really getting out of it is the people who make the money you believe you're making, okay? Being the pathetic piece of shit that you are for a living. Because no one's a pathetic piece of shit, you'll notice it, except they do it for a fucking living. Have you ever noticed that? Especially retired people. Right? No one's a piece of shit, but they do it for a living. No one's a sexual predator, but they're a professional working woman, right? They're a prostitute. And guess what they're going to treat you like? Right? And you're supposed to, as a man, you're supposed to like it. Right? An erection is consent. Right? A pulse is consent. These women, you have a pulse, that's consent. I've been around them, I've studied them, I've interviewed them. So many white women from childhood learn that if a man pulse, that's consent. And feminism is right, but yet it only focuses on women's consent or lack thereof, not on men. Right? It's not the fault of feminism, it's not the fault of women, but most women think that if a man has a pulse, that's consent to do what they want. Right? Because that's what the system does. You come out of your mother's womb and it's like, do what you want with me, I'm yours, Beelzebub. The world treats you like you've consented to doing whatever the fuck it wants with you. And you walk around with its cock up your ass and saying, I'm free, I'm free. You know? We might as well call humans cock up asses. Cock up asses think they're free. Hey, it's cock up asses think they're free. It's like their Indian name. Oh look, it's cock up asses think they're free. They're coming this way. You know? They're weird. Watch out. Don't call them that to their face. Why? That's their natural name. No, but they don't like it. Let me try it. Hey, cock up asses who think they're free. Come over here and smoke the peace pipe. And then there's like a war. It's like, wait, look what you did. I just told the truth. Damn those cock up asses who think they're free. Damn you to hell. It's your fault. You called them something bad, but it's the truth. Your teachers, right, they'll probably say you're human. But they work for a system that treats you like a pest. You're called a monster who cannot own or inherit property. Think about what that means. You are the free man. You're so free. Now, down deep, I agree. You're as free as you feel, right? You're as young as the girl you bang. You're as young as you feel, right? You're as young as the erection is just dawning. Never quite get there, but you know it's still got a sense that there's somewhere worth getting to. Something worth getting into, and a pleasure worth having, and then escaping from as quickly as possible. There's a reason why men go unconscious after sex, because really it's a form of human sacrifice. They're being raped. Women don't have sex with men, but the idea and the motif in comedy is that a woman sucks the life out of the man. As many women can ride him as possible until he's near death, to suck his spirit, not just his semen, out of his body. It's coded right into every culture of the world and religion, right? To suck your dick and to suck the life out of you. To suck your lips, the woman gets the best out of tonguing, out of sucking your lips, or sucking your cock, or sucking and fucking and licking. A woman's the one who gets the choicest meal, because the man is like deer meat. Deer meat is a man is deer meat. You're both monsters, but the way you're programmed by the number two, one has to dominate the other. And one bears all the accusation of it. And guess who is whom? I'm still a feminist. These are the conditions we live under, as men, as women. I don't imagine that's nice for anybody. It's not meant to satisfy women. It's not meant to satisfy men. And men will often learn to cannibalize women because they learn from women who have learned indeed from the oppressive system that that's the only possible way they can escape and still get what they want. It's like a chicken and the egg. Who started abusing whom first? If you're thinking like, we got to figure out how men started being rapists, or we got to figure out how women started becoming the mothers of death. We started dying from being born from our mothers. How rape affects their womb and behavior for generations, and what has affected family that there's any rape to begin with, or murder, right? And wars, and how people, for whatever reason, that in the minutiae of this moment and that moment, weren't saving freedom or saving the world from Hitler. They're just fucking killing people. Lots and lots of people. And it's sport. It's called a slaughter. Kill, kill, kill. Who cares why? There is no fucking reason. A guy comes into your home and you kill him. There's a reason for that. There are no reasons for these wars. But lots of people can be controlled easier than one person can be controlled. Respect
the power of the human mind. Respect a system that, in many respects, knows more about the power of our mind than we do and is never going to tell you overtly. But it has to use that information to hurt you, which means the information is always there. But you have to be able to see through the darkness, to read the darkness and the light. To understand that humans as a whole, under various septic monetary conditions, will not be understood until you understand the parasitical nature to which they have resorted. That their tree of good and evil and their personality is entirely black in an everlasting nuclear winter. And that's what the monetary system is. That's why you've got endless space and darkness and dark matter. That's the reason for all the coldness of man and his so-called universe, which in truth is the world. In the occult, the universe is the world. It's not billions of light years. It's the world. It's the world of your mind. It's the world of the sky and the sun and the earth. It's all here, right? The only place the Starship Enterprise has ever been is in your mind and in film stock and on movie sets and TV sets. You have made it real, right? The mind is its own place and can make a hell out of heaven, a heaven out of hell. You're being told all the time, but you don't know how to interpret what you're being told. You have to be able to use the dark part of your mind. What's the worst that people could be without knowing it? How murderous could humans be? What if war was just murder? What if we'd all been led to murder each other? Do we pretend like it didn't happen? Or do we just start being honest about it? Great, wonderful as we are, understand how humans, and especially in preservation of your decency and your people, can become murderers. And everyone that's become a murderer was first a decent baby. What did we do to them? War tells us that we can all be murderers. Let's show our children something different. You know, are you with me? Are we into ethics, or are we going to be psychos for the rest of eternity? You know, are we going to be psychos, or are we going to be ethical? Because every person started off as a child. Every person started off as a child. Why do we all have to be so defiled? This is a song for freedom and joy. Be surprised if you're just a goy. I don't really dislike Jewish people. It's not really a Jewish problem, but it should be all our problem, shouldn't it? It's all our problems, the Jewish problem. It's all our problem, and I think that's cool. If there's a bunch of urine, I'm jumping in the pool. Let's all get ourselves acquainted with the things that come out of our assholes and out of our mouth. Humans, you can walk around and observe. Live lives of intellectual shit, basically. There's so much beauty in a human being, so much beauty, we say, in our relationships, our sympathies, our love for each other, our family, our children. Pretty real stuff, right? The most real stuff. Oh, sure, there's presents on Christmas, but your son, your daughter is alive. They can make complete sentences and wipe their own asses. This is good. Life is good. We say life is good to ourselves every day. We're healthy, it's good. I get it. We're healthy, it's good. We're healthy, it's good. We're healthy, it's good. Something like this, how is it possibly worth your time? If your time is about being healthy and good, right? It seems very costly, right? It'd be costly to think this way, right? How does this compare? Your children are healthy, you're healthy, your home is healthy, right? You can't dispute that, right? Something about your occupations must be very sound if you can keep your home healthy, right? And do you ever look around at what's not healthy? Is there anything that bugs you that's not as healthy as you'd like it to be about your life, about things, right? And I would encourage people
to be as personal as possible about what you don't like before you start saying, well, it's these people or it's you, and I need to change these conditions. What do you not like the most about your own family? Because if you don't like something about the world, I guarantee your family is sensible of it. And if your family is sensible of it, right, your family is probably possessed of some little compulsion to demonstrate some of the worst possible conditions of the world to each other. Right? That's a fact. Right? So let's be honest about that. Well, I'm heading home now. I'm not going to walk around the island. I'm tired. Not home. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, health is a personal family issue. Families aren't all safe. Not when we look at the statistics. Families sustain all kinds of perversions that you end up kind of binding themselves up into a highly motivating cocktail of getting your life together away from your mom and your dad, becoming employed, getting pregnant, or courting, as they say, which is theater. The court is the theater, so courtship is the theatrical enterprise. It means that the whole idea of courtship is about fulfilling aspects and parameters of game theory with respect to role-playing, which invariably, whether you like it or not, is always going to be about human sacrifice, lowering sexual and moral inhibitions. Because that's what acting's about. Theater is about suspension of disbelief and lowering inhibitions in a way that makes the plot, which is always very grave, as entertaining, titillating, and effective as possible at slaying the audience with a light that the darkness out there comprehendeth not. The truth is out there, but you can't make use of it because you have to be silent. And your father was killed or taken away as much as he was silenced. And the voiceless father is projected into a lot of people by the groups and professions and alliances which you form as you become an adult. And that's why wars could be fought, because we were prosecuting on both sides the father without a voice. The German Nazis were the father without a voice, the voiceless father. They had no say in their fortunes. The German people who were burned to death by repeated fire bombings, it's people like you and me and your children, your mother, your father. And there's not going to be any Jewish film, in all fairness to Jews, about what happened to them, right? Being burned alive, grief-stricken and killed and murdered and burned alive again and again and again for days and nights on end. And just when you think it's all over, it starts again, right? You know about that, right? Because your history teacher told you that in high school, in college. You spent at least, a few hours talking about that. Because those people's lives are important. We're educated people. We learn from our mistakes, right? War isn't just about slaughter. And so your courtship is like your war. It's military game theory. It's a theater. And there's certain roles which you either assign to people or are assigned to you, or you pick them and you see how that works out. You don't join any profession, but that you become a certain kind of person. Right? I always liked the idea of the country doctor, the country lawyer. They were just an average, good country person like Tom Bombadil, but they cured pets or people like you would, you come from the city and you have all kinds of tumors. It's like, you'll be okay, Bartholomew. Just jump in the ocean every day and eat this rat poison. Or whatever it was, that it was a collection of the things that really work. I'm sure among folk wisdom there's a lot of things that don't work, but someone actually took the time to put it together. Not just an encyclopedia of everything that sounds medical, but the shit that works. And a way of talking that helps you find out that this disease is also related to a form of domestic abuse, brain parasites, and lesions suffered by legions of people who become no better than soldiers in all of the roles to which they've been put, however diverse or free they may seem to the average peon. Wait a second. It almost makes sense. But like I said, if you want to break the magic of the world, you have to
think darkly. You have to think darkly. You can't just be positive. It's this type of thing that brings the sun out. The sun is attracted by people who are truly positive, which is people whose minds can see into the darkness, look at it, and piece it apart. Right? And a lot of what's in the darkness is perfectly fine. This whole world will be in darkness in 6 hours. Doesn't make it evil, but evil things live in the darkness. Right? They can make a kind of curtain theater out of your mind and put on for your mind, and you put them on for yourself. But what a nation is, and what a police officer is, and how to break down in the world. And languages are little plays. When you read a book in your mind, watch these little finger puppets going in the darkness, but that doesn't mean you understand what they mean. They can put a curtain over your mind, the audience of your own mind, and you don't even know what your thoughts mean anymore or what they add up to. You live your whole life believing certain things, but you don't even know what they're for or what they add up to, because you're always in a trance, right? A sheep or no sheep, you know? And everything is so black and white, and yet the world is very black and white. And both the black and the white can be sacrificial. Okay? They can both represent your doom. Good and evil can both be evil. Up and down can be the same thing. The mountain and the ocean can both be the control of your mother's waters, either those of the stars or those of the deeps of your own beating heart. And what your heart first chose to love and why. And that no language in the world is that fucking language. And yet you say you respect children. Fucking go fuck yourself. Go fuck yourself and all your fucking professions and all your fucking flags, because they are gone. They're like the elegy to Keats. Everything is dead. The world has stopped. Your very heart has stopped, because your heart has become a heart dumb like a stone. And no stone was so dumb as your fucking heart. But you can strike it with a stick and it is sound. I can slap it with my dick and it's more sound than your fucking heart. Stop your ears to the sound of the voice of a child. And their first love, and the judgment of their fingers and fucking toes, that you deprive them of as they grow older, so they become better role-playing piece of shit sociopaths for the economic imagination of what's left of your fucking existence. So you say, I'm a person and I'm free, but that's not how you behave. And it strikes horror and demoralizing horrors to the flesh and blood. It mortifies your children and they die from just the way what you think is real. Your whole fucking life to, and theirs. You say, oh, this is modern life. This is good. While your parents are dying of bowel resection cancer and get ALS or something while they're in the hospital for a fucking root canal. It makes so much sense, right?